the agenda as published. Any matters or issues to raise on the agenda, or are members happy to adopt the agenda? By show of hands, members, if you are for the adoption of the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Pongose, Advocate Stole, Mr. Mkize, Mr. Gumede, and Mr. Bokula. I also support. Thank you very much. Members, the declaration forms are uploaded. If you can remember to complete the forms, send them to Mr. Dlamini. But if there is any declaration of interest by exception, members, you may raise your hand if there is any on the matters that we are going to discuss today. If none, members, then I'm proceeding to item number 5. Item number 5 is the aggregate results, which are the average prices for gas pipeline, for gas, as well as compressed natural gas customers. Please introduce the matter and highlight any key issues that you would like members to pay attention to.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is the aggregate results for gas pipeline and compressed natural gas customers for the 2022 calendar year. Chairperson, the report is done to promote price transparency and prevention of discrimination. Gas customers, Chair, use aggregate results to negotiate gas prices when entering into gas supply agreements with license. Chair, the results are calculated for each category of customers defined in Sub-Regulation 5 of the Pipe Gas Regulations on a provincial basis. The calculation method, Chair, is detailed under Section 4.9 on pages 5 and 6. Due to differences in value chain processes, NESA separates the aggregate results for CNG and pipeline customers. Chair, the results for gas prices are shown tables from Table 4 to Table 12, and that is done per province, while pipeline and CNG customers are separated, as mentioned earlier. Now, Chair, in order to expand the scope of the report, we have included volume analysis for the period under review. Chair, this section looks at the total volumes sold per province, total volume sold by each trader of gas in each province, and lastly, the total volume sold in the country, and the details are in tables 13, 14, and 15. The results here, Chair, show that for gas pipeline, Gauteng province accounts for 62% of volume sold, while Free State province accounts for the least volume sold at 1%. The same is also true for CNG, where Gauteng accounts for 72% of the total volume sold, while Free State accounts for the least at 2%. Lastly, Chairperson, we also looked at whether there has been a significant switch to gas from other energy sources in the 2022 calendar year, and the data does not show evidence of a significant number of customers switching to pipeline gas. The data does, however, show a notable switch to CNG from petroleum fuels. Chair, I'll end there and go straight to the recommendations. The recommendations for the PGS to approve the aggregate results and approve the publication of the RFD. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keswa. Members, the report is before you for comment, guidance, and any enhancements. By show of hands, members, if you have any. Mr. Pugula, you may go ahead, sir.
Chairperson, what I wanted to ask, I've just paged through and I've seen it, and apologies for my hand. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Pukula. Mr. Mkis?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask from the case, if they just to have a comparison, especially with between CNG and liquid fuels, where like a petrol and diesel, with the levies in as well as with the levies out. Because, or if I recall, the issue of the uptake of CNG is that currently there is no tax as such, and these other levies. And then just to get a picture as to how things would be with and without for a comparison in terms of behaving, thinking of a trajectory into the future fuels for vehicle propulsion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Mr. Gumede.
Thanks, Chairperson. Partly covered by Mr. Mkhize. Just to add and say, I think it would be useful that, as you would know, Chair, that there was a project back in the days of trying to convert vehicles from petrol to LPG, but a lot of that was predicated on LPG not being levied with fuel taxes. I think it's always useful that as we guide the process forward, that it is predicated on a business model that is not a one based on one fuel being taxed and the other not being taxed. So it's important that we've got an understanding on that. However, the second question I wanted to ask was, it's just a question, I'm not too sure. I know that, and I was struggling with how to frame this, but the question I wanted to ask was, gas being gas, whether it's methane-rich gas or natural gas or whatever the gas, or it comes as CNG or LNG. The question I wanted to ask is that if in a particular location for a particular class, so for instance, if we are looking at a class in KZN, class 1 in KZN, piped gas would have a particular value. Does CNG in the same location have a different value? And is that because of the fact that pipe gas are the people that are pipe connected only and cannot, that gas can't be used to replace CNG? I guess what I'm trying to understand, Chair, is it possible that the same gas, methane, majority, primarily, in a particular location, is it possible that it could have different values in terms of this, the value of it being what is in the pipeline and the value if it comes in a CNG form? And the question is, how sustainable is that if indeed it is the case? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Mr. Mkhize, is that the lingering hand before I allow the team to come in and respond?
Lingering, sorry.
Okay. All right. May you please respond, Tim?
Thanks, Chairperson. I'll start with the question by Mr. Mkhize on whether the inclusion or the exclusion of levies has any effect on the differences between CNG and petroleum fuels. Chairperson, currently the difference between the prices of the two energy sources is quite significant. So even with the inclusion of levies, that gap between the petroleum prices and CNG will still be significant. Chair, you also recall that these are total charges, so all costs are already included in the charge, and the levies would not be a significant percent of the total charge. So when we compare it to your diesel and petrol, the difference will still be significant. So meaning that CNG will still be much lower. We've done this exercise in other reports where we compare the prices of CNG and petrol and diesel. Now, Chairperson, in terms of the value of the pipeline gas and CNG, where they are located in the same location, yes, Chairperson, the value is different. That is mainly because of the value chain in CNG. So with CNG, there are a lot of capital requirements that customers require from the suppliers. There are also delivery costs that are added onto the price. So you'd find that the prices for CNG are much higher than pipeline or methane gas that comes through the pipeline. So the value is different. And in terms of how we can go about in solving or looking at the issue, Chairperson, that is part of the work that is ongoing, that NESA is busy with at the moment. I would also let Ms. Magoda to come in. Thanks, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Magoda.
Yes, Chairperson, I want to add that the methodology that are used in determining the price for CNG and the pipeline based on the 2020 methodology, they were different in that the different methodologies were just reflecting the different risks and the different costs that are faced by the CNG versus the pipeline customers. Now, in terms of the pipeline, you will recall that we used to use the benchmark methodology, meaning that they benchmark based on the fuels, the gas prices from the different hubs internationally. Whereas with the CNG, the methodology that was used was the pass-through methodology, in that it used to determine what cost they incur in obtaining gas, and then it used that. So therefore, the prices that are yielded by the different methodologies were different. But in essence, what we're trying to say is that they used to be valued or determined differently. Hence, you find that even the prices that are yielded are different. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Let me check. Mr. Kumete, was your question answered? The value that you're talking about, is it the value in terms of price, or is it the properties of the compressed natural gas versus gas that is in the pipeline?
Chair, I think I'm going to keep flagging this until it makes sense. All I'm simply saying, until I make sense, because clearly I'm not. The point I'm just trying to raise, well, the answer to that is no, it's not. But the issue is that for me, gas is gas, and for us, you know, and for us, the challenge that we are facing is one that simply, maybe before we get great penetration of one over the other, is that for as long as there's a difference, if I'm sitting at Impangeni in KZN or Richards Bay, where that pipeline makes a dog leg, and I can tap onto the gas there, and the gas there from the pipeline has got a particular value, but compared to the gas that I buy in CNG and I'm sitting in the place, it's got an X plus one plus another number. Is that creates arbitrage. Is that for me, as long as I can get gas coming out of a pipeline, because it's exactly the same gas, it's different sources. Well, exactly might be stressing it, but it's still methane-rich gases in both cases. So that is the challenge that I'm trying to address, Chair. That maybe it may not be something that is prevalent at the moment, but you cannot have the same thing having two different values at the same location. It creates an arbitrage.
Okay, I hear you. And the answer to that, Mr. Gumede, is this: that it is because of the Act. If the Act differentiates between the charge for the molecule, which is your price for the gas, and also the charge for the service, which is the tariff for the pipeline. Now, with your CNGs and the other technologies that they use, that gas was in the pipeline first of all. Then it gets injected and compressed. Now the trader has to recover the cost of the compression as well as taking that gas through those modules, and there's a special transportation for that, and then take it to the customer. So the trader does not then recover the cost of those compressors and all of that through the pipeline, because it would not be allowed in terms of the Gas Act, because it is the cost for the network that is in terms of the tariff. Now that cost then that they are recovering in terms of regulation 4 sub 4 of the piped gas regulations, which says that we must allow the licensees to recover all of their operating cost and all the total investments that were made. So those total investments are therefore put in that cost of gas. So hence then for the CNG, it will be slightly different as opposed to a person who's tapping directly on the pipeline and simply pay a tariff on top of the cost of the molecule. So that is the difference, that those additional costs, and that's why you see the difference there. Yes, Mr. Gumede?
Chairperson, I just maybe just again, I'm never going to raise this again. I'm just simply saying that I fully understand. All I'm merely saying is that even when we looked at liquid fuels, you had fuels that were manufactured from synfuels, namely sasol fuels, synthetic fuels. At some point, I mean, I'm going to give you the facts that simply say that at some point the cash cost of producing liquid fuels from that oil was about $10 per barrel equivalent. So when the price of crude went to over $30, people were saying, why don't we price the the same petrol coming out of synfuels, which cost an equivalent of $10 US per barrel to produce? Why don't we price that at that, and then price the product that comes out of crude refinement of crude priced at an equivalent of everything of an equivalent of $30 per barrel? Why do we price it the same? Or why do we price those two products the same? The issue here is that it is, if you do, you create an arbitrage, you create an opportunity for fraud, you create an opportunity for somebody to say, I bought this at $30 when in fact they bought it at $10 equivalent, and that they basically get to pocket the 20. That's number one. But number two, in terms of the value of the product, the value of the product does not recognize whether it came via pipeline or it came via CNG. The value of a product in a particular point X is merely that value of the product, which might be a marginal cost, which must be priced at the latest at the price of the molecule that actually is the one that balances the market. That is all I'm saying. And apologies, Chair, but I know I've raised this a few times. But for me, I think as we have a greater penetration, if we don't solve this problem, we're going to have a much bigger problem later on.
Okay. Yeah, I think there will be some competition at some point, so they will find a way of how they survive in the market and meet competition there. Mr. Mkhize?
Thanks, Chairperson. I don't want to delay the meeting. Safe to say that I note the comment. I think it's going to be, or the response, I think it's going to be important to say, yes, we've got the price. It's then to look as to what are the implications so that we can be able to then inform or I would say go back to policy by way of our advocacy when dealing with certain aspects, so that it can then inform how things need to be dealt with. In terms of the differences, there will be good reasons and for those differences. But then now the question is, what does it do in terms of the market and distortions, and therefore requiring maybe a change in terms of how things are structured in terms of the policy as well as the regulatory framework. Hence my question that was on the issue of the comparison. And I think the same issue when it comes to arbitrage, that at one stage it would not be a problem, but then as you go down the line, it becomes a problem. One of the issues that I recall was where there was a question around whether there should be taxes included or not. And the response then was, it's not looking at the penetration then, is that it's not worth doing it in terms of the administrative work that would be involved. But that it's something that whenever one talks of the increased penetration of gas as CNG for fuels, for vehicle propulsion, one should always have that at the back of his mind to see at what point that will kick in, and for people that are making investment to be aware of what kind of changes could take place going forward. A kind of a roadmap that is applicable at a particular stage. Hence, I would say that that comparison in terms of this report should somehow be a permanent feature. Yeah, I would leave it at that. But I appreciate the report, the response. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to close the matter now. I think the responses have been provided. So I'm going to close the matter. Mr. Ngumala, are you coming with the response? I think the members have closed their comments.
No, Chairperson, I just wanted to add quickly that perhaps in view of the comments that the members have provided, what we can then do is to have interaction with the other divisions at staff level, just to see the approach that is used in electricity first and also petroleum with regard to the same matter, so that we can then be able to sync the process going forward as part of that regulatory advocacy, as Mr. Mkhize is proposing as well. I just wanted to add that part. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, members, I note the issue of those differences and the fact that there's also a regulatory framework that allows them to recover cost differently, and we still have to deal with Regulation 44, which has been an issue before I joined NERSA, and it has still not been amended to date. So unfortunately, that's the one that also the Constitutional Court commented on that Regulation 44, how it is supposed to be given effect to. And also, I think at some point we may need to talk about the arbitrage, because the arbitrage is not necessarily bad, especially if it benefits customers and if customers can actually switch, because it could also be a tool for competition where people can find gas cheaper elsewhere. So if you price yourself out of the market, that will be your problem. These are private companies. If they choose to price them out of the market, and arbitrage actually is not something that is necessarily bad, if then there's flexibility and people can easily switch between suppliers of gas. But at some point we need to then talk about that. So the advocacy in this issue of pricing here, without generalizing it, we need to go straight to the point, and that point is that it will be Regulation 4 sub 4, and that Regulation 4 sub 4, we already brought it to the attention of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. And having said that, members, I would like to take you to the recommendations, and the recommendations on page, if you can assist me with the page there, Mr. Keswa. It's on page 21. It is recommended that the Pipe Gas Subcommittee approves the following aggregate results of pipeline customers in Gauteng, Free State, KwaZulu-Natal, and Mpumalanga, as well as CNG customers. And what is requested is the table, approval of the table on the aggregate result, table 16, table 17. Those are the two tables, and then also 14.2 to approve the publication of the aggregate results for pipeline and CNG customers on the NERSA website. Members, by show of hands, if you approve. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thank you, Mr. Pukula. Mr. Mkhize, thank you, Advocate Stolle, thank you, Ms. Bongose. I also support the approval as requested. Item number 6 is the final report with recommendations on the inquiry on measures to facilitate competition, investment, and achieve security of supply in the South African piped gas industry. Please introduce the matter and the context of this report, as well as the findings and recommendations.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members and colleagues. Chair, the inquiry on measures to facilitate competition, investment, and achieve security of supply in the South African pipe gas industry was initiated in February 2023, and it was initiated due to the persistent lack of competition and investment and the looming security of supply issues in the industry. In March 2023, NERSA then published a consultation document on the NERSA website, which outlined proposed measures to facilitate competition, investment, and achieve security of supply in the industry. These measures were identified based on an assessment of the current state of investment and competition and the reasons for the lack of investment and competition in the industry. An assessment of the existing regulatory framework as well as an international review of measures that have been implemented in gas industries internationally were also undertaken. The consultation document was generally very well received by stakeholders, and a summary of stakeholder comments is provided in Annexure A of our final report, which is attached to the submission as Annexure 1. The proposed measures are discussed in detail in sections 6 and 7 of the final report, and which is attached as Annexure 1, and are summarized on Table 1 on page 5 of the submission. Chair, in the interest of time, I will not go through each of the measures in detail in this presentation, and I will take them as read. With regards to stakeholder comments on these measures, it is noted that most stakeholders agreed that all the measures proposed would serve to eventually facilitate competition, investment, and ultimately security of supply in the South African gas industry. In respect of measure number 10, which deals with the potential for the structural vertical unbundling of the industry, most stakeholders did, however, caution against undertaking this exercise prematurely in an undeveloped South African gas industry and highlighted the need for careful evaluation of the reform model and timing of the implementation. Generally, stakeholders were of the view that vertical unbundling could increase competition in the industry, but that it could lead to increased costs and thereby higher prices or charges for end users. Chair, we also did a cost-benefit analysis to assist in the assessment of the proposed measures. This analysis showed that the measures could potentially facilitate investment and competition to varying degrees. Some of the measures may result in direct benefits to pipe gas businesses through effective access to the infrastructure required to compete and supply customers, as well as increased availability of gas supply. Consumers may also benefit from increased competition through improved access to gas and potentially better gas prices. However, in respect of measure 10 on the potential for vertical unbundling, the benefit to pipe gas business and consumers is not guaranteed, as there could be higher prices for gas supply and gas facilities due to potentially higher costs of unbundled operations. Chair, having regard to the analysis conducted, we therefore propose that measures 1 to 9 and measure 11, as outlined on Table 1 on page 5, be implemented. However, in light of the results of NERSA's cost-benefit analysis, as well as comments received from stakeholders, it may not be necessary to pursue measure 10, which deals with vertical unbundling at this stage. In this regard, given the nascent state of development of the industry and the issues regarding security of supply, it may be premature for this particular measure to be implemented now. Chair, with regards to the way forward on this project, once this report and its recommendations are approved by the ER, the report will be shared with the DMRE and an implementation plan for the approved measures will be developed. The plan will lay out how NERSA intends to implement the various measures and the timeframes involved. Chair, it is also noted that we have identified further areas for research that may be considered by NERSA, and these are outlined in paragraph 6.5 of the submission. In addition, Chair, I just want to note that Mr. Mkhize has sent us his comments on the submission prior to the meeting, for which we are very grateful. We have sent our responses to his comments through to him, and will make enhancements based on his comments, and we will also reflect these in our covering submission to the ER. Chair, it is therefore requested that the podcast subcommittee recommend that the energy regulator approve two things, namely, firstly, the final report with recommendations on the inquiry on measures to facilitate competition, investment, and achieve security of supply in the South African pipe gas industry, attached to the submission as Annexure 1, and then secondly, the publication of frequently asked questions regarding the final report with recommendations on the inquiry on measures to facilitate competition, investment, and achieve security of supply in the South African pipe gas industry, attached to the submission as Annexure 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. du Plessis. Members, the report is before you for comment, input, and any enhancements on this work going forward. By show of hands, members, if you have any input. If not, members, going then straight to the recommendations on paragraph 14. The recommendations are that the Pipe Gas Subcommittee is requested to recommend that the ER approves the final report with recommendations on the inquiry on measures to facilitate competition, investment, and achieve security of supply in the South African gas industry. And this is in Annexure 1 to this submission. And then secondly, the committee is requested to approve the frequently asked questions and that the report be published in the NERSA website. By show of hands, members, if you approve that. Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thanks, Ms. Mbongose. Thanks, Advocate Stole. I also support Mr. Bukula. Are you happy to support? Please check if Mr. Bukula is still connected. All right, but we do have the majority supporting the report. All right, we then move on to item number 7 on the agenda, which is the preliminary assessment of Kwande gas application of the maximum price for the period 1st July 2023 until 30 June 2024. Please take the matter as read and highlight the key issues in this.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members and colleagues. I would like to present a Kwande application for maximum price for the period 1 July 2023 to 30 June 2024. NERSA has received the application on the 7th of July for the approval of the maximum price. We have analyzed the application. The analysis is based on submitted on paragraph 7 of the discussion document. NERSA has presented this submission while we have given Kwande an opportunity to we requested them to provide additional information on the expenses where we thought that there were duplications. They have responded to that while the application was out for approval. The application is presented and the analysis, as I already said, is provided on paragraph 7. And then the cost of the application, because the applicant imports gas, so the analysis and how they calculate their cost is also on paragraph 7, but it has been converted into rands. So I would request the members to approve the publication of the discussion document and note the preliminary assessment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Sikenu. Members, the submission is before you, which is the discussion document for public engagement and comment on the application by Kwande Gas for its maximum gas price. By show of hands, members, if you have any questions on this submission. If none, members, I'm then going, Mr. Mkhize.
Thanks, Chairperson. I just like just to draw to the attention to 5.10, 5.11 there regarding the margins. Aren't those margins much higher than what one would normally expect? Just want to especially if I look at 5.10. I just wanted a reflection from the presenter around the quantum of those margins. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Mr. Kumet.
Thanks, Chairperson. I support the publication. I just would like to request that if it's possible, to add a question to the public out there, to ask the question that does the return on the assets that is included in the in one of the components, the trading cost, is it not the same, or does it not amount to double accounting when we then include profit in terms of EBITDA? Chair, you know my concerns. I've raised this a gazillion of times, but can we just, can I be indulged? Can we just pose that question? And this is not just about Gwande. It's really about the actual methodology, to see whether it's one thing to actually recognize all of the trading costs, capital and otherwise, but it's another to actually then allow a return and as well as allowing a profit. Can we just ask the stakeholders out there? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Can we please respond to this question? Dumisani and Samuel, please, can you also come in here to clarify from a basis of the methodology, the two questions on the margin, what the methodology says, and the fact that it's a maximum price in the context of Section 22.
Sorry, Chair, maybe I should come in on the question from Mr. Mkhize, just to say that question is already part of the discussion document. We have asked that question in view of the fact that there is duplication, so it is part of the discussion document. Then I'll allow my colleagues to come in. Thank you, Chair.
Are you referring to the question by Mr. Gumede?
Yes, yes.
And you have to clarify him properly there. And also point out where is that question asked, what paragraph is it, so that he can be able to see if the question covers his concern. If you can check that first. Okay. Ms. Makota, your hand was up. May you please come in here, starting with the issue of the margin in 5.10, and then go to the issue of the return as well as the profit.
Chairperson, I will start with the issue of the return. Although we do have a question there, I don't think it covers the specific question of Mr. Gumede, because usually Mr. Gumede always asks us whether the trading margin and the trading cost are a duplication. So we will rephrase the question just to cover specifically the point that he raised. Now, coming to Mr. Mkhize's question relating to the margin, in terms of the methodology, we benchmark the margin that we give with similar companies internationally. We couldn't find companies in South Africa that are similar to the companies that we have in pipe gas, and therefore we had to opt to use for the international companies. And now our benchmark results indicates that currently those companies are earning a margin of around 31%, and that is the margin that we use as a benchmark as per the methodology. Now, if you look at the application from Gwande Gas, you will note that in their application, they have used the methodology. However, the only error or the mistake that they made is that their calculation then included the tariffs and other charges. Hence, the difference between ours and Gwande's variance is around 40% on the profit component. So, Mr. Mkhize, in terms of the margin itself, it is correct. It is not high. It is within the benchmark as prescribed by the methodology. However, the error that you pick up there on table 9 of the discussion document, it is regarding the fact that they have included the other charges, whereas in terms of the methodology in the calculation of the margin, they have to consider only the cost of gas and the trading cost. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you very much. I think it was also important to clarify that issue of the margin, because some of those trading companies, that margin is the margin that is taken from the actual price of gas. And ours is the upper bound, which is the maximum price of gas. So or from that margin that you see there, it must still be discounted so that every licensee complies with differential pricing in terms of Section 22. I think that must also be emphasized. Okay, can you please point us to the question that Mr. Gumede asked?
Ms. Magoda has already covered. Chair,
what paragraph is it?
Sorry.
What is the paragraph for the question?
The paragraph that I was referring to is what Ms. Magoda said. It's not. It needs to be rephrased.
Okay.
I will look at the paragraph, but the question is there, Chair, but it does not really, as Ms. Magoda has indicated, so we're going to have to rephrase the question.
Okay. Yes. All right, that's fine. Okay, members, the question that seeks to find out whether there is duplication in the way that the return and the profit is done will be asked in terms of the trading cost and the margin there. All right, members, we now go straight to the recommendations, and the recommendations are on page 8 of the covering submission. Paragraph 16, the Pipe Gas Subcommittee is requested to note the preliminary assessment of Kwande Gas's application for the approval of the maximum price of gas energy for the period 1st July 2023 until 30 June 2024. And then the other decision is that the Pipe Gas Subcommittee is requested to approve the publication of the discussion document on the application as shown in Annexure A. Members, by show of hands, if you approve the noting as well as the approval. Thank you, Ms. Mpungose. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. I also approve. Can't see if there are other hands. Thanks, Advocate Sithole. Mr. Pukula, are you still there? Thank you,
yes,
Mr. Pukula.
I am, Chair. Apologies, my hand was not raising.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pukula. All right, we now move on to item number 8. Item number 8 is the preliminary assessment of Transnet Pipeline's multi-year tariff application for the period 1st April 2023 to 31st March 2026. Please take the matter as read. Provide the context to members, given the fact that Transnet had previously applied and it was not approved, and now is complying with the directive from the energy regulator. Please take us through the application.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the matter as read, as guided. The submission is a request for the subcommittee to note the preliminary assessment of Transnet's transmission multi-year tariff application for the period FY23 to FY25. And we're also asking the committee to approve the publication of the discussion document over this period as an Annexure A. As background, the application is driven by NERSA's decision not to approve Transnet's previous application. And in response, Transnet has submitted this amended application. And what also needs to be noted is that the major change in this application has been the actual decommissioning costs that have been that Transnet has aligned with the previous year's study that they had embarked on. Then the impact of this is a 28% change in terms of the tariff from the previous tariff that they applied for. And then what's also key to note is that from an analysis perspective is that there is further decrease in the tariff that NERSA is expecting, given that there is the NERSA has contacted Transnet with regards to, because the amendments that they've made, there's one error that NERSA has picked up that needs to be amended, which would translate in the tariff being lower further. Then obviously what would happen is that the difference between NERSA and the analysis by NERSA with the application by Transnet would be less than the 10%. Then when it comes to the analysis, just to, in a nutshell, the major drivers of the differences were return, depreciation, and also the tax calculations. These differences were mainly as a result of timing differences and also from a data source differences. However, we recommend that that the subcommittee notes this assessment and approve the discussion document to be published. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Njesul. Members, the submission is before you for comment, and it is here for requesting the members to approve the discussion document for public comment. Any questions, members, by show of hands? Are members happy with the preliminary assessment and the issues that were pointed out? If so, I would like to then take members to the recommendations, which are on page. Can you tell me the page, please? Scrolling through. Can you help with the page, please?
198, Chair.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. The Pipe Gas Subcommittee is requested to note the preliminary assessment of the Transnet pipelines application for the multi-year transmission tariff, as well as to approve the publication of the discussion document for public comment, and the document is attached to this discussion document, sorry, to this application. Members, by show of hands. Thank you, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Mkhize, Ms. Mpongose, Mr. Pokula, Advocate Sithole, I also support. Thank you very much, members. We are now moving on to item number 9, which is the quarterly report on the maximum gas energy price calculations confirmed by the full-time regulator member for piped gas regulation. Please take the matter as read and provide the right context to the members with regards to this report.
Morning, Chairperson, members of the PGS, and my fellow colleagues. The submission before this committee, really, it's a quarterly report on the maximum gas energy price calculation confirmed by the FTRM, primarily responsible for pipe gas regulation. The purpose of this submission, Madam Chair, is to request the PGS to note the quarterly report on the maximum gas energy price calculation for the period of March, April, and May, which were confirmed by the FTRM, primarily responsible for pipe gas, for publication on the NERSA website. The calculations are presented in Annexure A. Madam Chair, the significance and the relevance of this submission for publication really is to address the request made by the stakeholders to ensure that between the maximum GE price calculations and the NERSA calculation, and in addition, this will minimize the discrepancies between the NERSA and the licensee calculation of the maximum GE price calculations. Madam Chair, our recommendations are found on page 8, paragraph 14.1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malele. Members, the report is before you. These are calculations that were delegated just for confirmation, and there were parameters within which the FTRM is required to look into this information. The energy regulator delegated that similar matters must just be confirmed if they are in line with the previous decisions of the energy regulator. So these are prices that were confirmed, and now they are brought to the subcommittee so that the subcommittee is apprised of what work has been done as per delegation. If members have any input or concerns, members, you can show by raising your hands. If none, members, I'm going to take you to paragraph 14 on the recommendations. The subcommittee is requested to note the quarterly report on the maximum gas energy price calculations for the month March, April, and May 22, which were confirmed, not approved. Will change there, which were confirmed by the FTRM, primarily responsible for piped gas. They are for publication on the NERSA website and are shown on Annexure A to this submission. By show of hands, members, if you are happy to note. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thank you, Ms. Mpongose. Thank you, Mr. Bukula. Thank you, Mr. Mkize. Thanks, Advocate Sithole. I also note with that correction on the approval, it's supposed to be confirmation. We now move on to item number 10. Item number 10 is the update on the MRP as well as the risk-free rate calculations for the period ended 30 June 2022. Is it not 2023? Please take the matter as read and also just emphasize the significance of this kind of calculation in the work that we do. Take it as read.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Once again, I'll take the matter as read and shoot straight to the point. The submission before this committee, Madam Chair, it's an update on the market risk premium and risk-free rate calculation for the period ended 30 June 2023. The purpose of this submission, Madam Chair, is to request the PGS to note the updated risk-free rates and market risk premium attached as Annexure A. The purpose, the significance and the relevance of this submission, Madam Chair, really is intended to address the request made by the stakeholders that in order to ensure consistency in the calculation of the risk-free rate and market risk premium, the energy regulator should publish this information on a quarterly basis. In addition, Madam Chair, licensee use the market risk premium and risk-free rates in their calculation of the cost of equity when they're modeling the tariffs and maximum price of gas. I would like to draw the committee's attention to focus on page 5 of 21, paragraph 4.11, where we shown the difference between the market risk premium and the risk-free rate for the period ended 31 March 2023 vis-a-vis the 30 June 2023. On table 2, Madam Chair, the MRP took a knock by negative 0.5%, and the risk-free rate also weakened by negative 0.03% from 31 March 2023 to 30 June 2023. Madam Chair, our recommendations are found on page 7 of 21, paragraph 14.1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, the submission is before you, and thank you for that succinct summary of the content of this report. Members, any questions on this submission? Any guidance, enhancement? If none, members, I would like to take you to paragraph number 14.1. It is recommended that the Pipe Gas Subcommittee notes the updated risk-free rate as well as the market risk premium for the period ended 30 June 2023. And they are attached into this submission as Annexure A. The second decision is to request the Pipe Gas Subcommittee to note the market risk premium and risk-free rate for the period ended June 2023 to be published on the NERSA website. Members, by show of hands, if you are in approval or in support of the request to note. Thank you, Mr. Gumede, Mr. Mkhize, Ms. Mpongose, Mr. Pugula, Advocate Sithole. I also support the noting of the calculations. Item number 11 is the Geographic Information Systems Progress Report on the status of the licensed gas network or gas infrastructure. Please take the matter as read, indicate the purpose of this report. I think it's the second report, if I'm not mistaken. If you can please direct the members to the kind of progress that has been made now from the previous report that served in the committee, so that members are aware what additional work has been done and the importance of that work that has been done. If you can take the submission like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. The purpose of the submission is to request the Pipe Gas Subcommittee to note the status of the licensed gas network with reference to information gathered on licensed and inspected infrastructure, as well as recorded gas incidents. From the approved licenses from April this financial year, there is proposed 2 interconnections into the gas infrastructure in Gauteng, and then the other one approved license is for trading in gas over the existing network. We also the data also shows that 84%, just over 84% of the connected customers are connected on over a distribution network, and then 15% connected over a transmission network. And also with the data is also showing us the age of the customer meter stations that are serving operating customers. And then with regards to accessing this GIS data, from what we had in the previous report, is that we needed NERSA employees to be able to have access to the GIS system. So we NERSA had actually hired a service provider to deploy ArcGIS portal sites for NERSA. And then the ArcGIS portal site is now available on Tanzwana for the 3 departments, which is pipe gas, petroleum, and electricity. And then also the individuals that can have access to the system are listed on Annexure B. So what still needs to be done is to create a manual where users can have reference on how to navigate the ArcGIS system. I think I will stop there, and the recommendations are on paragraph 14.
Thank you very much. Members, the report is before you. Any comments, members, input or guidance on this report? By show of hands, members. Ms. Mpongose?
Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks to the team for the presentation. I think it's actually quite encouraging that the GIS system, gets updated on a regular basis, just to make sure that we have up-to-date information of our network. What I wanted to find out on page 2 of 20, clause 4.3, where there was a need, due to non-compliance, there was a need for Sasol Gas to conduct an audit program to make sure that all the decommissioned assets will be the information will be updated. They are reflected as such, so that we have reliable information. So what I want to find out, after the audit by Sasol Gas, which was done, I think, by June, by when do we hope to conduct our own in-house verifications, just to make sure that we've got up-to-date information? That's the one question and comment. And then I think I had another one. I'm just scrolling through. Sorry about that. Okay, or maybe Advocate Sithole can go through while I check my other comment. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mpungose. Advocate Sithole, followed by Mr. Mkhize.
Thanks, Chairperson. Chair, mine is just for, as a matter of interest, really to just check whether, in terms of the GIS, as it's supposed to show, the network of the gas pipelines, with the recent incident in Johannesburg, were we able to use our GIS to see if it's related to any of the gas network that were there or not? As I said, it's just a matter of interest and curiosity to see if the GIS is able to assist us in looking at some of these things. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mkhize.
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks to Madam Ndebele. I appreciate the progress that has been made and all the efforts that are put towards this. As you'll appreciate, that I've been very vocal around the issues of GIS. I would, however, request Madam Ndebele that we please indicate where we want to be. What are we aiming for at the end of the day? What are the targets? And then we're clear as to where the problem lies. In other words, we're saying we do have the technology to then put the various layers therein so that we can be able to then extract that information. Because even on the question that has been asked by Advocate Stoll, if we have not put the information regarding the network in the Johannesburg area, you cannot then expect to then go see what is in that area and what pipeline and who's actually the owner of that pipeline, and get the relevant details around the pipeline. So it's just we note here, but in terms of really understanding where the challenges are, what next needs to be done, it becomes difficult to decipher that. So I would appreciate that in the next report, it's clear as to where we stand, what are the challenges. If the problem is in data capturing, so that you can put it into the system, then we then have to find a way as to how to address that. And then the processing of the information and what value to get really from the GIS will then be the next step, which will be value maximization, which will also entail converting that information to some form of intelligence for the regulator to use to become a more effective and efficient in regulating the industries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Can you please respond, Ms. Ndebele, and if you need any assistance from the GLC team, Mr. Milatu may also come in here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll just take the first question by Ms. Mpungose regarding verification on those decommissioned assets. Well, on this one, Chair, it is work in progress. When Sasol reports decommissioned facilities, the team immediately responds to that, and when they report that assets have been removed, the team goes on site to check, to verify, and before the end of the financial year, we do compile a report of all the findings and the remedial actions that have been taken. So it will be reported before the end of the financial year, like any other findings, Chair. Then on the second one, I'll give Ms. Ndebele a chance to respond to this one about verifying the incidents in Bridge Street, whether we did go through the GIS to check if those assets are licensed and who they belong to, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you please answer the other questions?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Mr. Melatu, for taking that question. In question of the Joburg blast incident, I've actually verified the incident against the data that we have from the verification that I've done. The gas incident blast occurred just approximately 2 kilometers away from a licensed 12-inch distribution pipeline. So that incident was actually not on the licensed or regulated or the pipeline that is regulated by NERSA. So I wouldn't say who the reticulation belonged to because we don't keep that data. I can only comment on the data that we keep. The incident is approximately 2 kilometers away from a licensed distribution pipeline.
Okay.
And then on Mr. Mkhize's comments, I will take them as areas of improvement to be added on the next report.
Yes, Mr. Mkhize wanted the what is it? Sort of the mapping out of where we want to be. If you can come with that, maybe in the next meeting as a sort of a matter arising, just to map out where do we want to be, where are we right now, what is it that we still need to do, and where do we want to be? If you can, please come with that response in the next meeting. Mr. Milatu, you had your hand up.
No, my hand is not up, Chair, but I wanted to respond to this, but it has been responded to. Then on the one, the Joburg incidents, Chair, as reported by Ms. Ndebele, is that even though the network reveals that the pipeline is a reticulation pipeline, but as the team, we are doing our investigations with the colleague gas, Chair, because even though it's reticulation, it has implications on other networks that are regulated by NERSA. And we also want to find a way of working with the municipalities, Chair, that are responsible for the regulation of reticulation, because we also have discovered issues of capacity in the municipalities regarding regulation of reticulation, as well as absence of bylaws regarding that. So we're exploring ways to cooperate and work with them so that we can have they can have a capacity in as far as the regulation of network of reticulation. That will also assist us as the energy regulator as well in that regard, Chair. Thank you.
All right, but just to be very clear, there is no evidence of that incident being caused by pipeline, whether reticulation or distribution. So we must be very clear there, because there are no findings like that. And even from the pronouncement of the findings by the team there, there is nothing that shows that. So we need to be very clear there so that there are no implications here that this might have been caused by a pipeline that transports natural gas the methane there, they indicated that it could be methane from any other, not necessarily from the natural gas. So that must be very clear, because there are other gases there. So that methane might be caused by other things. So let us be very clear there, so that there are no implications here. So reticulation is not regulated by NERSA. It will not be on the, for now, it is also not on, unless maybe there's cooperation, it will not be under the network of pipelines that are licensed by NERSA. Reticulation is under the municipalities, so it will not be under the pipelines regulated by NERSA. So I think that must also be clarified. So the distribution pipeline that Ms. Ndebele was referring to, it will be a distribution pipeline that is licensed by NERSA. And if, for interest's sake, just to understand, because of the gas there, the team has established contacts with the reticulator, who's also not just the reticulator, is also the gas trader. But that area where the incident occurred, there's a reticulation pipeline, not distribution pipeline, just to understand. And it was confirmed that there was no reduction on pressure, and there was also no, what is it? I mean, there should be fire if that's what they said, if it was caused by a gas explosion per se. So I just want to clarify that. Mr. Mkhize?
Chairperson, I think from my side, the issue of saying where do we want to be now, and where are we going with regard to GIS and utilization thereof, I think that will help to deal with issues in the sense that there's information. The primary information we seek now is our infrastructure that you are regulating, and let me put it like that. And then it could be that in the next steps we'll have to include also other pertinent information that could have an impact on the infrastructure, so to say, because we're looking at the geographical issues around the geography. And so we're looking at the geography, and therefore some of the things that are there would be affecting. Like if one were to say, look at the topology of the area and other things, those can be layers that are added in the same vein that other, even the reticulation we could include that layer for further analysis, but it should not be a concern. And I remain of the view that yes, even the nature of the blast, in the sense that one would expect some fire if you've got a hydrocarbon that has caused that incident, and people were even, I think, not affected. I think some people were smoking around. They wouldn't have that kind of a thing when you've got an incident that is emitting a very flammable gas. So I'm saying that let's just maybe not confuse this issue with the Johannesburg incident, but I think it does give us lessons to say that in future, when we look at GIS, we also look at other issues that could be affecting, and that information will come as we improve. And hence, we need to be able to be clear as to where are we going with this and what we're seeking to achieve with it. And talking to the earlier issue in terms of the comments one has submitted to Madam du Plessis was also to be able to deal with the issue of saying there are these bylaws that municipalities need to have in place in terms of the holistic regulation of gas as well as other utilities. And it's the cooperation also that should be there between ourselves and these municipalities. And I'm happy from my side in terms of the direction the team is taking, in terms of saying they want to be able to work together with these municipalities to have a holistic view of what is happening. But of importance is for that to be presented to us, that we understand, we are able to guide and really say that we are on top of things. So that if such incidents happen, we can quickly just give feedback and drawn from the GIS. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Members, if there are no further comments and subject to the comments and recommendations to advocate for cooperation with the municipalities and identify areas of cooperation with the municipalities, that's something that GLC, you need to come back to the subcommittee about. So that maybe we can see how we can sort of work together. Let me, before I wrap up on that, on the issues, give Mr. Gumede, Mr. Pukula, an opportunity. Mr. Pukula.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, on this thing of the report, may I request that maybe a one-pager or a two-pager that just covers the different issues be made as a report available to the regulator members, so as to further, enhance our understanding as regulators of what we regulate and what is in there.
Okay.
Thank you,
yes.
Chair. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Proposal. So we will note the proposal. If Mr. Milatu, you can do that, maybe a two-pager clarifying the areas of jurisdiction and what can be done and where we are not supposed to come in, and how we can actually, if we want to cooperate with the municipalities on areas that we can be able to assist with. If you can bring that and send it to the members as well, so that members can understand the scope of our jurisdiction, what we regulate and what we don't regulate, and what's happening in certain areas, especially with regards to the incident that happened. With that, I would like to take you members to the recommendations on paragraph 14. The Pipe Gas Subcommittee is requested to note the updates on the GIS regarding the licensed gas infrastructure. Secondly, to note the status of the updated licensed pipe gas network, as well as to note developments on the ArcGIS portal site shared through Tanzania, as well as the progress with regards to digitalization of field data collection. By show of members, if you are happy to note all of that, including the request to share a 2-3 pager on the areas, on the scope of jurisdiction and what we regulate. Thank you, Ms. Mbongose. Thank you, Mr. Mkhize, Mr. Gumede, and Mr. Pukula, Advocate Stole. I also support the noting of those items. Members, we're now on item number 12, which is the report on developments in new gas sources in South Africa and neighboring countries. And the report covers activities from April 2023 until July 2023. Please take the report as read, highlight the key developments and actions that are required.
Development in new gas sources in South Africa and neighboring countries for the period of April 2023 to July 2023. Chair, the report looks at the obstacles that impede South Africa's ability to effectively support its oil and gas production. These include a convoluted regulatory framework, in environmental apprehension, and legal maneuvers that are aimed at delaying exploration progress. The report further discusses South Africa's plans to hold the first auction for shale gas exploration in the environmentally sensitive Karoo region. The auction, which is expected in 2024 and 2025, will include at least 10 new offshore blocks, including areas previously held by Shell. However, as we have seen in the past, Chair, any initiative related to the Karoo has been met with vigorous opposition from environmental advocacy groups. We can expect a similar response in this instance as well. The report also covers progress in the Kapowership project and the new challenges the company is facing Chair, it is reported that the commercial banks and financial institutions are hesitant to provide funding for the project. They are citing a reputational concern, among other things. Another challenge for Kapowership, Chair, is the government intent to adjust the duration of its power purchase agreement with Kapowership from 20 years to 5 years, which may significantly reduce the company's earning potential. On the positive note, Chair, Renegen has successfully obtained agreement to secure a substantial amount of debt funding for its gas project in the Free State. The company, Chair, received funding totaling 14.2 billion from for the implementation of phase 2 of its Virginia gas project from International Development Finance Corporation of the United States. In Mozambique, Chair, Sasol has announced the discovery of natural gas in the Bonito 1 exploration well, which represent a significant opportunities for the Pande and Temane gas field. The well is situated in the area known as PT5C, which is located in the onshore Mozambique basin. The discovery could have positive implications for South Africa, Chair, as we currently rely on gas import from Pande and Temane gas fields, which are expected to decline from 2025 onward. Finally, the report covers the development in the Namibia offshore Orange Basin, which has emerged as a hotbed for exploration. Companies like Total Energies and Shell are leading ambitious drilling campaigns there, which have estimated resource reaching the multiples of billions in barrels. The discovery in Namibia, Chair, represent a promising opportunity for South Africa due to its close proximity to Namibia and the existing economic ties. The detailed implications for this discovery are discussed in Section 9 of the report from pages 17 to 18. I will end there, Chair. The report is here for noting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mtiane. Members, the report is here for your consideration. Any questions, members, comment, areas of improvement? By show of hands, members, if you have any. If not, members, Mr. Mkize, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chairperson. From my side, I firstly want to appreciate the report because it just gives a feel as to where we're going and what is happening. I note also in terms of what is on page 4 on numeral I there. The statement that there is this the 4 trillion cubic feet of gas and condensate, those discoveries. I think maybe if you can also report be more technical in terms of our reporting, as to say, for example, the P levels or the probabilities of that, because I've seen that sometimes things are said very optimistically, and then when you find that you need to, they don't get realized, in other words, and it becomes like a disappointment. There's a level of oversell that I think is there. I think the same when it comes to page 2-3 there on C, the last sentence there, talking of accumulating approximately 2.5 billion barrels. Just maybe to reduce how the statements could be wild, as to be very specific on some of the things, as people that are technical in the space, and to talk to some of the things that are kind of concerning based on what we had seen, and kind of probe further as to what could be the underlying factors. I note, for example, if you look at A, which says that according to the BP Statistical Review of Wealth Energy, I think it will also have to say maybe for which year is that, Africa's share of global output has decreased from 12.3% in 2010 to just 8.1% in 2021. You know, one would have expected it maybe to increase with less coming from other countries, especially noting the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And then when you go, for example, on page 6, on under D, we're saying that the exploration of Karoo shale gas has been mired in a prolonged cycle that has now entered its 14th year. But then we then go on and talk to the shale gas auction in the Karoo. I think there should be a kind of a relationship between the two, so that one can see the probability of that happening, because you are in a quagmire there in D, but then you've got when you go to J, you've got a gas auctioning with no qualification. So that will just be my request, that in terms of improvements with regard to this, I'm not necessarily expecting a response per se, but just to emphasize the need for having a little bit more precision, probing further, and that such a report should also tell us as a regulator in terms of recommendation what we should do, from our side, which I like in terms of the conclusion and the action plan that has been put forth. But thanks for my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize, for that input. I think these are just issues of enhancements. I don't think that you need to respond to. I think Mr. Mkhize indicated the fact that sometimes you need that technical information. You need to put it into context, especially for people that are not necessarily engineers and specializing in these things. So if you report on this, you must also be able to indicate the work that has been done insofar as what is recoverable, recoverable gas, and what that means in terms of the recoverable gas, apart from what has been found. So if you can put that in simple terms. And also just make sure that when you the section that you report on the shale gas, that it is well aligned, so that you report consistently, and in certain areas you must put qualifications and also avoid inconsistencies. I think that is the essence of what Mr. Mkhize is saying, if you can kindly do that. All right, thank you very much, members. We're subject to those areas of inputs for consistency, reporting, and alignment. I would like to then take you to the recommendations on paragraph 20. It is recommended that the Pipe Gas Subcommittee notes the report on the developments in new gas sources in South Africa and neighboring countries for the period April to July 2023. By show of hands, members, if you're happy to note the report. Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Thank you, Ms. Mpungose. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thank you, Advocate Stole. Thank you, Mr. Pokula. I also support the noting. Members, we now move on to item number 13, which is the ROMCO GTA 1 tariff for the period 1st April 2023 until June 2023. That is Q2 in terms of the timelines that are in Schedule 1 of the agreement. Advocate Tola, is this a lingering hand?
Apologies, Chair. It is indeed. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. May you please then introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. This is a submission for ROMCO's GTA 1 tariff for the period 1st April to 30 June 2023, which is quarter two. And its purpose is to request the subcommittee to note the tariff over this period. Chair, this report is a report that we do every quarter, where we monitor the GTA1 price in line with the pipeline agreement. As far as our monitoring is concerned, the GTA1 tariff by ROMCO was compliant over this period. And also from an expectations perspective, we're expecting the price for the following quarter to increase by 0.91%. This is in line with the PPI increase. And our recommendations are on line or paragraph 14. We recommend that the subcommittee notes the tariff over the period. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. Any input, questions on the escalation of the tariff GTA1, the main pipeline from Temane up to Secunda? If none, members, I would like then to take you to the recommendations on paragraph 14.1. The Pipe Gas Subcommittee is requested to note the ROMCO GTA1 tariff of 20 Rand 50 cents per gigajoule for the period April 2023 until 30 June 2023, and that is the quarter two tariff calculation. By show of hands, members, if you're happy to note. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thank you, Mr. Mkize. Thank you, Advocate Stole. Thank you, Mr. Pukula. Thank you, Ms. Mpongose. Thank you very much. I also support members. Members, we move on to item number 14, which is the volume balance report for the month of June. Please take it as read, emphasize the key issues on this report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On this report, Chair, we note that 14.2 million gigajoules of gas was delivered to the South African market compared to the expected 13.4 million gigajoules of gas. And the variance, Chair, for the June report is minus 2.44%. which is far below the expected variance of 1%, Chair. And we should also note, Chair, that the increase in the expected gas volumes, Chair, as a result of the two other traders that ENH is supplying with gas, Chair. But I think what we need to do in future is also to check the expected monthly volume of gas in terms of their contracts, as well as the gas delivered, so that we can properly compute the additional gas expected to the South African markets, besides the GTA, as well as the other contractual volume balance expectations, Chair. The recommendations are in paragraph 14. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions of clarity on this report? Comments? Ms. Mpongose?
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks, team, for the presentation. Just two questions from me. What I wanted to find out with regard to the volume balance data, on the natural gas, which both Sasol and Kwande Gas import to SA. I know that it doesn't form part of the regulated asset base, but I just wanted to find out whether the two entities do report to NERSA, on this for record purposes, so that we have a sense on how much they import to SA, even though it's not part of the regulatory agreement. And then the other one was with regard to volume fluctuations. I think it's under 6 point figure 3. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I'm at the correct. Yes. Yeah. Figure 3. What I wanted to find out, with regard to the yearly fluctuations of the supply volumes of natural gas that were not necessarily fulfilling the GTA obligations, what I wanted to find out, there was an instance on 6.36 where there was a variance, and that somehow, and then there's a decrease of the supply. So what I wanted to find out, was the variance loss linked, or that somehow linked to the decline, to the decline in the gas volumes? Yeah, thanks. That's all from me.
Thank you, Ms. Mpongose. Mr. Milatu, please clarify the first part on the reporting by each of the importers, and also get to the issues of the variance, as well as the link with the decline in the supply.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As in my report, I said that next time, Chair, we need to properly compute the expected volume balance from the other traders. I was talking to Kwande as well as Sasol South Africa. Yes, Chair, if you look at the table there, the appended table, it does, Chair, specify who the gas is going to. I think that's table 1. And table 1, Chair, it shows on paragraph 2 and 3 of the table, it indicates the gas delivered to Sasol South Africa and the gas delivered to Kwande, as well as the volumes. They are clearly reported there, Chair. But what I was saying is that we, in terms of the contract, we need to know how much is expected on monthly basis for the two, so that we have a correct computation of the expected gas volumes per month coming to South Africa, other than the contractual volumes, Chair, as properly put by Ms. Mpungose. Secondly, Chair, on the fluctuations, I'm not sure.
No, Letsatsi, you must clarify it properly. First of all, the report that is before us, because Mr. Mpongose also touched on the agreement, the report that is brought before us, is always about how much Sasol is importing from Mozambique to South Africa, because Sasol carries those obligations in terms of the agreement. So it has to report on how much it brings to South Africa. So the minimum is 120 million gigajoules, but it brings more than that due to further investments in the pipeline. Now, recently, Kwande Gas also started importing gas. So what Kwande Gas is importing, it is also included in here, but it needs to be, this report now, it needs to be there's a section that needs to be inserted and structured in a way that will make this quite clearly. So yes, Ms. Mpongose, the volumes that Sasol imports are the ones for the monthly volume balance report that we always have on a monthly basis. That comes from Sasol to report how much it imports. Now we need to add other traders such as Kwande and put the information clearly there and do separations. So the table that you're referring, Ms. Mpongose, to, it might not be so very clear because it includes other gas that must be taken by ENH in Mozambique, and part of the ENH again, it may be duplication, because what ENH takes out of Mozambique there, it also gives it to Kwande and all of that. And then there's gas also that after Resano Garcia, it must also remain in Komati Port for the operations in Komati Port. So there are volumes that remain in. It might not be easy for people that don't work on these things to understand that table. So you need to just clarify that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the clarification. So the point I was addressing there was that Ms. Mpungo's question was, is it reported by SASOL? So I was clarifying that it's there in the table and it is reported. We get those volumes on monthly basis, Chair. Thanks. Then on the second one, Chair, I'm not sure if I got Ms. Mpungo's question properly. I think she said that there are fluctuations in the system and is the variance that gets reported linked to the decline. Well, on that, if that is the question, Chair, I think there's no simple answer to that, to say the variance. Remember, the expected variance here is 1%, plus minus 1%. Now, is it linked? Is the fluctuation in the variance linked to the decline? So the issue about the variance is linked to the system itself. It has got nothing to do with the increase or the decline of gas in the system. It relates to the way the system is designed, the way metering is designed, Chair. So the system can have more pressure at one time or less pressure at another time. And the way it operates, Chair, it can have variances due to many factors, temperature changes, pressure changes in the system, and operational requirements. So there is no link between your gas fluctuations and the variance, because the variance it's a technical matter that is linked to the operation of the pipeline itself. You can have more gas in the system and yet have the variance of gas because it is relative to what is in the system, Chair. I hope, Chair, I've tried to explain, and it is clear to Ms. Mpungo, Chair. If it is not, Chair, we can take it out of the meeting and try maybe to have a discussion about it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Pongose, do you have a follow-up? I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to put it differently. Maybe Mr. Letsatsi will understand it differently. In year financial period 2020-21, the supply was 153 and of natural gas to South African market. However, in 2021-2022, it declined to 151. So I wanted to know what was the reason for the decrease, of the gigajoules that were supplied by SASOL during those two periods. And then hence my question was asking, is that in any way linked to the variance loss in any way, which is tried to address? But I wanted to find out what was the reason for the decline. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Letsatsi. I think you can explain that, especially with the issues with the volumes that were expected on GTA3 and the shutdown with regards to that decrease. But the extent of the variance cannot be attributable to the extent of that decrease in the supply. So please, can you explain this through the incident that happened? That is the one that explains that decrease.
All right, Chair. Though you've tried to explain it now. Yeah, if you check in that table, Chair, from 2004 up until now, Ms. Puma said we've had varying degrees of gas coming into the country, and the reasons for the decline or the increase of gas have been different, Chair. So in the last financial year, it is reported there. There's a paragraph that explains why there has been a decline as well as increase in gas from the last financial, from 2021. There were during the COVID pandemic, there were issues about the supply of gas by the customers, taking of gas by the customers. It led to the decline of the gas volumes. In the last financial year, there were many reasons. The shutdown, as you have mentioned, Chair, amongst them, and the other reasons, the uptake by the customers, which also fomented the less volumes taken by the traders. Chair, all those factors contributed to the decline in the gas volume. So year in, year out, you'll have varying degrees of gas, and there will be various reasons that are explained as to why do we have the decline in gas, Chair, as we have explained in this one, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Bongose, did that clarify you, Ms. Bongose, the question you asked?
Thank you, Chair. I'm covered.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Members, if there are no further questions, I would like to take you to the recommendations. The recommendations are that the Pipe Gas Subcommittee is requested to note the Sasol Gas's monthly gas volume balance report for the month of June 2023. By show of hands, members, if you're happy to note that. Thank you, Mr. Gumede. Thank you, Ms. Mpungose. Thank you, Advocate Stole. Thank you, Mr. Pukula. Mr. Mkize. I also support. Thank you, Mr. Mkize. Thank you very much. Members, we have come to the end of the open section of the Pipe Gas Subcommittee meeting. And I would like to thank the members of the public who were following the proceedings and the discussions today. And thank you for showing interest into our regulatory matters. We are now going to close this part of the meeting so that we can consider governance matters. Thank you so much.